Fantastic. Thanks so much to everyone for coming today. A couple of disclaimers before we start. This session is being recorded and will be available to view on demand. If you don't wish to participate in a recorded session, I would disconnect now. By default, you'll be in silent mode, but you can ask questions directly in the Q&A and they'll be addressed at the appropriate moment as part of the interactive session. You can also post comments or questions on your preferred social channels, leveraging the hashtag #HitachiVantera_IIoT. So hello and welcome to today's virtual conference, New Business Models Enabled by IIoT and AI, brought to you by IIoT World and sponsored by Hitachi Vantara. I'm Jeff Wheelwright, your host for today. On behalf of the whole IIoT World team, our sponsor speaker, Hitachi Vantara, and our panel guests, we thank you for joining us. We'll monitor our online social channels, so feel free to send your questions in the Q&A section or via our social channels with the hashtag #HitachiVantara_IIoT. We have many people registered for the event today, representing a broad global community. In fact, this session is completely full, so thank you everybody for coming. We're excited to have you here today and look forward to a really insightful hour. The session, as I said before, is being recorded and will be available to view on demand. So with that, I'd like to welcome our guests and wish our audience a good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you all again for joining us. Today, we have a subject that's very much on people's minds, new business models enabled by industrial IoT and AI. We've assembled a great four-person panel that I know will be able to offer some impactful insights. Our panelists are Sid Verma, General Manager of the Manufacturing Practice at Hitachi Vantara, Anand Yanamurthy, Frost & Sullivan's Industry Principal for the Industrial Practice, Jonathan Vest, Director of Manufacturing Practice at Hitachi Vantara, and Bob Hine, Commercial Director for the Digital Solutions Business Unit at JR Automation. Welcome, everyone. I'll start our session today by introducing Anand Yanamurthy, Frost & Sullivan's Industry Principal for the Industrial Practice. He's passionate about technology and focuses on industrial IoT, big data and analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, 3D printing, simulation services 2.0, and digital transformations. His day-to-day focus is on driving strategic industry innovation and capitalizing on growth opportunities from industry convergence. Welcome, Anand, and take it away.
Thanks, Jeff. Since the topic is about the focus of IoT in industrial segment, And Nasid would be walking us through several examples of how companies are doing these solutions in the current environment. I thought I'll set up preamble for the the use of IoT in the industrial and manufacturing segment. One of the challenges that manufacturing segments do feel when it comes to IoT is for a very long time, manufacturing segments have been connected. Either it's MES, PLC, some form of DCS, SCADA solutions. Connectivity has always been there. So what's different in IoT? The major difference in IoT is that uh, it is the confluence of OT and IT systems, wherein you are bringing IT technologies of cheaper computing, low cost sensing, and ability to analyze a huge volume of data compared to what a traditional industrial technologies would be able to do. Because of these small changes, there is a large impact on the manufacturing segment. Primarily, we see four different things happening. One is obviously the convergence, which is the IT and OT worlds are converging to create new growth markets, new revenue making opportunities for companies in the space. We are seeing the boundaries between solution providers kind of merging, wherein, for example, you have GE Digital, you have Hitachi, you have ABB, Siemens, who are entering into the IT space, and you have companies like IBM, Microsoft entering into the industrial segment. So you see the confluence of different solution providers in the market. Another major change is the new business models, moving away from traditional product-oriented structures to more revenue, recurring revenue, subscription-based solutions, and also the shift from selling products to selling performances. The final thing is on transformation. We are seeing all the industries getting transformed. Um, Next slide, Jeff. We see all the industries transforming from the way they operate, the way they manufacture, and the way they interact with their customers. So if you look at the industries, we had typical manufacturing industries, we had typical oil fields. All of them are moving into digital solutions, wherein a single digital thread is able to connect different elements of the operations into a unified enterprise, wherein the company itself is much more um, able to shift into new technologies or new challenges as and when they are able to face. For example, in the last year was a great example. When COVID happened, companies that were already on the digital transformation journey were able to weather the storm much better than companies that were still figuring out, hey, what is happening? Is my customer orders declining? Do I need to change my operations? Do I need to have a two shift rather than a three shift? So things like that were much more easier when you have a unified digital solution. And also the way companies interact with the customers is also changing. We are seeing companies moving from focus on selling products, selling products on specification to selling products on performance or outcomes. We are seeing companies moving from just focused on capex, large capex, capital equipment purchase to recurring revenues of a combination of both OPEX and CAPEX, so that's what we call the TOTEX. So um, that's another major change. And apart from that, even inside the operations, rather than focusing on planned downtime, planned maintenance schedules, companies are able to develop prevention technologies through AI ML solutions and enable continuous process optimization to increase their um, operational value. Next slide. This is a busy slide. There are several things that we see happening that is driving adoption of IoT technologies and the changes that's happening in the manufacturing segment. Obviously, the biggest one is digital. We see digital solutions being leveraged by the manufacturing segment. We see digital platforms coming up. We see assets being integrated. Number two is we are moving from capex to opex. We see focus on a service economy rather than on product economy. Um, from a solution standpoint, number three, we are seeing moving away from proprietary technology. So the traditional MES, DCS, and PLC and SCADA solutions were proprietary technologies. We are going more and more towards open standards. There is focus on digital threads uh, that can weave across the different silos in the company and provide a unified solution. We're seeing new business models. That's what the entire webinar is about, wherein we will see um, how channel and different ecosystems can help customers come out with new business models, looking solutions or ideas on outcome-based solutions. From an operation standpoint, number five, we are seeing the factories of future. We are seeing more collaboration between them, between what we call man and machine, rather than the man telling the machine what to do. We are seeing more collaborative robots. We are seeing augmented reality, where it's a confluence of both these important assets within the manufacturing shop floor. And finally, we are seeing the move from siloed operations to more an enterprise solution, wherein we are able to shift from focused on a single plant, single operations to more enterprise, wherein different segments within the organizations are able to perform together to um, on a global optima rather than a local optima. Um, Use of digital technology is also helping companies benchmark performances, not just at a different site level, but also at an enterprise level. And these are major changes that is helping companies move towards leveraging IoT in the manufacturing space. Back to you, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Anand. Very much appreciated, and you've given us a lot to think about. It's actually a great way to frame today's discussion, and I think provides a really useful structure for thinking about industrial IoT and AI. Next up is Sid Verma, General Manager of the Manufacturing Practice at Hitachi Vantara. I've been lucky enough to be on panels with Sid before, and I know he's going to be generous in sharing what he's learned about how new business models are being enabled by industrial IoT and AI. In his day-to-day work, he focuses on incubating and growing the services and solutions footprint at discrete and process manufacturing customers. We're excited to hear what he has to share. It's all yours, Sid.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for your generous introduction. And good day to everybody. Welcome to the presentation. Paul, can we jump to the next slide, please? Yeah, thank you very much. So I'll start with something that has become quite familiar to everybody, which is the industry shocks or supply chain shocks. I guess we are living in one of the biggest one in the century or of our lifetime. Typically, as we know, like manufacturing provides a considerable part of things that we use in businesses and in day-to-day life. And if everything is going good, you don't feel the pain. Means this time a shock happened and you saw a mad rush to get things that we thought were always available. So when typically these shock happens, these things bring a considerable change in the way we do our business. And we usually adopt on it, typically on a slower pace. But what we have seen, and I'm going to believe that you have seen it similarly, the rate of change and these external factors driving these shocks to the system has grown in number and also in magnitude. Just if you remember the last 3 or 4 years when we had considerable fires and floodings, trade wars, and I guess everything is superseded by the pandemic. I mean, it has forced us to change the way we do our supply chain planning, our manufacturing planning. And it has become imperative to have these digitally transformed and reliable just so that you can survive now. Means it used to be something we had to do, but now it has become a burning platform. So as we kind of started believing needs to be done, the important part is how do you start, where do you start, and where do you put your first steps in? And I'll try to take the time today to talk some of our own experiences that we had, and maybe it will be helpful. Next slide, please. So just to give you a background on Hitachi, so I'm guessing Hitachi's name is quite familiar to everybody in the world. It's a big brand, 110-year-old Japanese company. It has a heritage across many industrial verticals. The Ventara business actually represents the digital business of Hitachi Limited, and actually brings in over 60 plus years of IoT and IT experience to that industrial heritage. Essentially, what I was trying to communicate now with you is we are also a manufacturer at heart. We have scores of factories, and they are also spread around the world. And we face the same challenges and dilemma as we try to transform ourselves digitally, and also try to deal with the same shocks that everybody else is dealing with. Next slide, please. So I'll start with a description of what we call the intelligent manufacturing journey. This is, as you can see, a step-by-step process, but it typically is an iterative process where you learn and you improve. And this is the journey that Hitachi has taken for itself as we have gone through our own digital journey. So we are proud to share some of the learnings as we go forward, and also kind of improve as we go ourselves. So this will always be a self-improvement and a continuous improvement process for us. One thing to take notice here, it's a step or a staircase of value. As we go up the value chain, you start getting a lot more value in terms of return on investment and ROI. So what we have seen, manufacturing maturity is varying as we go to different clients. I mean, it's true for ourselves. Our own factories were built in different years and they are at different maturities. Most of the clients where we talk to usually are somewhere between the level 2 and level 1. So they're trying to get the data in, trying to get some basic BI in, some analytics in. And for us, the challenge is to how do you take them systematically in a cost-effective manner to the level 3s and level 4s, where you start seeing a symbiotic return and digital way of harnessing the value of, a way of harnessing the digital value for yourself. And the challenges are similar across the board. Our typical environment is very heterogeneous. I mean, everything was built over multiple generations. So the ages of machine are varied. Architecture at that time used still persist. I mean, islands of automation, island of manual areas, and several large monolithic areas kind of semi-connected or disconnected. This kind of creates a really important or a difficult journey in terms of getting to a level 1 or a level 2. And it's important to focus on the key areas and learn from processes as we have done. We learn from one factory to another to drive maturity. Next slide, please. So this slide helps illustrate the different levels basically of the journey as we have done. So on the left-hand side, you see a staircase to value. And on the right-hand side, what we have tried to do is to align the functional areas in which typically a manufacturing environment runs, and try to assign some core solution areas that we would like to build capability both in terms of consulting and product. So this will help operationalize a lot of the digital transformational aspects or use cases. And of course, you will need a help of a consulting element to it, which is like how the operations work, how the consulting element work, and then there is a technology element to it. And usually we have seen a use of manufacturing experts in a particular element like quality and production, coupled with some AI expertise or data science expertise. Next slide, please. So the solution modules, as I was showing before, I mean, they are kind of a building block. We build organically as need requires or ROI requires, and they are kind of interlinked in the sense of you can build on top of each other and kind of organically start getting more and more value and start getting up the staircase to value, as I was saying earlier. On a technology front, the way we build these things are microservices, so you can actually functionally and technically add it on to the system. And of course, these things can be deployed on the edge, on-prem, or on the cloud, just the way will be the best suited. Some of the base capabilities you'll find here are technologically like a foundation, and then some are functional. So this is like just to keep that in mind. So we like to think about it that way, and then the functional elements kind of drop on the top. Next slide, please. So, so typically what we have shown so far helps you to get started on the digital journey, like align functional elements to ROI to the client. But the important part then comes at how do you scale it? Scaling has been kind of a difficult element for most of the partners and our clients and even the vendors. I mean, POCs work great. They show ROI. Scaling is where things trying to kind of fizzy out and you kind of start losing the value. So for us, creating a path to scale is what we have started using the word mass customization. So the important part for us as we start on this mass customization journey is to make sure we align to what the customer sees the world. So it's on the right side, you can see, and they typically have their own environments in which they live and breathe. And functionally, they are operating in those same solution areas where that's kind of how they do the work, like it's maintenance and supply chain and health and safety and quality. And they have officers and managers who run those areas. For solution providers or transformation agents, we need to make sure we align our offerings and our sales to what the customer actually sees. So typically there are two challenges when you get into this. First and foremost means none of these two companies are similar or exactly similar, even though from outside they might look similar. So you might say GM and Ford, they make cars, the large trucks, they should be similar, but once you go inside their environment, their supply chains and their products and their technologies, they tend to be quite different. So what it kind of intends is you can't use a standard product and kind of use it across the board. On the other side, if product tends to get more expensive, I mean, you can use the other side, which is the system integrators, and the system integrators tend to solve the customized problem, but then they tend to be more expensive. And then there is always this long-term maintenance and how will I keep it up kind of problem. And this is the same challenges we faced. And I mean, typically everybody gets a platform company and then builds on top using an SI or in-house consulting group. I think what we were trying to get to is if we could do a better way of handling the functional need of the customer with having the product and the customization. So we started this mass customization journey where our solution course that we were saying before, we put it in a solution or a product, you can call it, it's called Manufacturing Insights. And we were trying to make it configurable within the product. So in the sense, like it has functional capabilities like yield management, production optimization, digital Kaizen, and you just need like a little bit of customization to get to the industrial offering. So it's kind of a turnkey way of getting to what you need to. It's on a definition, a subtle change, but it kind of takes you from a 60-40 product versus SI to like a 90-10, where an industrial company can actually start this journey relatively easy for themselves. Next slide, please. So just closing the loop on the staircase to value. I mean, the central idea is to accelerate the descriptive, predictive, and customer inclusive approach to getting this manufacturing operations. And I mean, for us, manufacturing operations kind of break down into the assets and maintenance, production, quality, supply chain, the core areas in which the way manufacturing companies do their business. And our promise has been to kind of bring our experiences from our own journeys and kind of put it out there in the manufacturing journey I was showing about and how the solutions are available. Next slide. Just to give you a glimpse of some of the offerings that we build and deployed for our own self and some of our clients. So just these ones show you a snapshot of how the overall dashboard looks like if you're running a production on a global scale. The right side shows a bottleneck analysis being done for a production line manager just to see how things are being built, how the subsections are being built, and if there is any gap or any delays. Next slide, please. These pictures show how a quality manager will review in real time how the product is being developed and digitally make actions. And the right-hand side shows you a maintenance technician's view of the same process and seeing how the assets are being utilized and how maintenance activities are being done and what needs to be done next. Next slide. This kind of brings me to what's the process of doing this. I mean, I kind of gave you a general journey and how kind of functional domains kind of fit in, how can you use a solution set or a product. But typically a journey for us starts with kind of having a discovery, because not everybody is same and not everybody wants to start from the same point, and their problems are not always similar. So we start like in a consulting fashion. We start with a discovery, aligning the goals, challenges to what the customer's actual immediate needs are. What we found is the next step typically depends on clients. And what we do, we have 4-step approach to looking at it, which is we look at first a digital optimization, a value-based optimization, where we start for looking for where is the most value hidden in the process that needs to be leveraged or opened up using digital. So it could be spare parts or scrap management or yield management. Next one we could do is a business strategy element, which is a typical industry 4.0 journey. How is everybody in the industry progressing? How's the benchmarks happening? Like how Anand was mentioning some of those changes. We follow that journey, industry, sub-industry by sub-industry. The third element is looking at operational excellence in the sense of like Kaizen, improving safety, improving production, just process changes that can fix and improve things. And the last area that we focus now a lot with the JR automation team that we have Bob Hines talking lately is around automation, looking at how things could be automated and improve. So all of these assessments kind of drives a use case list, which is a high list of priorities and ROIs. And then kind of we build a roadmap that starts the chain where we start the proof of value. Proof of values, typically, we try to use the existing IP that we have on the manufacturing insights toolkit that kind of really rapidly deploy the POVs, but we are open to integrating it to the client actual environment and other technologies. We quickly deploy it and operationalize it, start measuring the value being generated. And typically, we like to create a digital COE at our partners and our clients so that the value is persistent over time. And also we can actually enable change because digital technologies are not easily adopted in manufacturing. Next slide, please. Just to show our own example that we eat our own dog food. So digital transformation is taken very seriously within Hitachi, and we have extensively used it in our own environment. So just to give you the example, our Omika Works factory in Japan was rewarded or recognized as an advanced lighthouse by World Economic Forum. And they have taken these principles at heart and have got considerable improvements Just to bring the point that this is not like a 6 months or a 1 year journey. It has taken many years to get to this, and it's always a continuous journey where you keep improving. Next slide. So I want to take a little time to talk about one of the customers' use cases, a very traditional client, a mid-size automotive part supplier, 30 manufacturing factories, make parts for OEMs, and build over multiple periods, like over 20 to 30 years. They face the same challenges like a typical manufacturing company, like downtime issues, like unpredictability around it, performance issues around machines, kind of lack of understanding of how the OEE or operational effectiveness is for the units, and condition monitoring or maintenance was kind of manual. So we started this journey for them, with them. Next slide. Basically, we started with the same way as I was saying, the process. We started the discovery and the assessment sessions, and they followed more traditional Industry 4.0 benchmark and journey with us. We quickly honed the expectations and ROI around 2 use cases, which was level 1 and level 2, what we defined, like real-time operational effectiveness for all their important and key assets and machines. And then we went on the predictive maintenance journey, which required machine condition monitoring. And what we were able to leverage was the base capability, the level 1 capability in our solution course. And we were able to get those things set up relatively quickly. And then we went on to the OEE journey to maximize machine uptime. And so let's go into the next slide. Yeah. So this slide shows kind of the outputs of the first phase that we did with them. So left-hand side talks about the phase 1. The phase 1 ended up connecting most of their key machines, and we were able to visualize a machine level, a cell level, and a factory level OEE for them. With that, we got the data from the machine side and also some of the backend systems like MESs, which allowed us to do anomaly detection in the process. And then eventually, once we got some data and analytics was done, we were able to do intelligent alerting. On the right-hand side, you see the predictive maintenance side being set up. So as you are aware, like in manufacturing, acoustics and vibration tend to predict like 50 to 60% of the failures. So we had to co-create with our client a digital signal processing module, which allows us to do high frequency vibration analysis. And we call it the digital signal processing submodule within our suite. And that allowed us to do prognostics, fault diagnostics, and then analyzing of the thing. Next slide, please. So this slide kind of talks about the improvements or the journey in terms of making the solution better over time. And we call it the data science as a service journey. So what we do here, and we just started the journey with our client, is to start collecting their data from their factories and their assets into a data platform. It's like step 1 to step 2. And then we have defined some analytical models, like end-of-life calculators, RUL, healthcare health indicators, failure predictions. And these things, we tune it to the assets for the customer, and they start giving predictive alerts. Kind of, this is the next step to the condition monitoring I was saying. And those things will drive how the operator and the maintenance happens in the field. And of course, we can play with these models as machines degrade or change parts over time. And this is a way for us to put in optimization on top of an operational platform like MFI. Next slide, please. So we finished the level 1 and 2 activities, the use cases. We're now on the level 3 data science service with them. Basically, we did the MVP design. We did the POC finished. It was quite a successful one for us. at the end, the client was able to get real-time visibility of their production operations and also a good look at the critical failure modes and some predictability on it. So far, we have been able to considerably manage their downtime on some of the key machines. And I think the production improvement side has helped them improve the OEE on the setup by almost 2 to 3 points. Next slide, please. So important for us to show from this journey is how do we fast track and deploy and institutionalize some of these core elements that kind of made us successful at ourselves and our clients. And I especially wanted to focus at small, medium client business factories. And traditionally, because large companies do have the budget and resources and they have in-house groups, they tend to run digital transformation quite successfully. And means if you look at most of the market eminence, they are the ones leading the pack. So we try to build something that a small, medium business can actually utilize and also run on this digital journey. And just leveraging my first slide or a message there, the industry shocks and the pandemic kind of have made it a burning platform. So we need to enable some of our client partners to do this. So this is kind of how we were kind of getting there. So basically what we have figured out is a defined roadmap that aligns with the functional use cases and ROI. So we kind of have that pre-built, so we know where to start and what gives the best ROI. And from there, like we kind of always kind of suggest having a long-term partnership with trusted partners and friends, which kind of aligns to your own business objectives. Because even though everybody would like to do it themselves, nobody in the sense of one company can do everything. You'll need multiple partners to do this. An important thing that we learned in this our manufacturing journey is things tend to repeat. So we need to pre-package some of the IP into turnkey solutions that can be used with minimal customization. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide, just to conclude. So I think that the intent is to accelerate digital transformation in a very pragmatic approach. You need, I think, a journey, a partner, which has some experience in this journey. And so you don't make the same mistakes that others have done. And also kind of, you don't get stuck in the analysis paralysis of a POV world. And from there, kind of pick the best use cases, do big and bold use cases, but just keep in mind that this is not like a sprint, but it's a marathon. So you will have to orchestrate all the elements of your company in driving the value towards this. With that, I'll pass it back to Jeff. Thank you very much for your time and attention today.
Thanks so much, Sid. I know that people will have a lot of questions for you. And I would remind everyone to use the chat window or the Q&A to ask your questions, and we'll get to them after some initial thoughts from our next two panelists, Jonathan Vest and Bob Hines. Jonathan's responsible for pre-sales, architecture, and proposing key IoT and analytic solutions to Hitachi Vantara customers with focus on asset management, optimized factory, and predictive maintenance. Meanwhile, Bob is the commercial director for the Digital Solutions Business Unit at JR Automation. His business unit is focused on developing and realizing the benefits of data analytics, both to grow the digital business as well as augment traditional automated systems. I'm so excited to hear what you both have to say. Perhaps you can start, Jonathan.
Yes, give me 1 second. Let me share my screen and we will get started.
Fantastic.
Sorry, hold on just a second. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, so Jonathan Vest here. I'm a director in the manufacturing practice at Hitachi Vantara. So you just heard from my director. So instead of going through and giving you guys a overview of our strategy, which Sid has already done for you guys, we're going to go through a partnership and talk through kind of the journey of this partnership with JR Automation. Bob will cover kind of the intro for JR Automation, and then we'll get into kind of our journey as a partnership for industrial IoT. So without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to Bob Hines. Bob is Director of Sales for Digital Solutions in JR Automation, and Bob and I work closely together on this partnership. Bob?
Hey, thanks, JV, and greetings to everyone from the great state of Michigan, where I actually heard a bird chirp this morning. So there's an end to the winter apocalypse we've been going through this year. So for those that are not familiar with JR Automation, just a very quick slide. I won't go through all of the data and details. You can read that for yourself. But we are a 40-year-old company, literally founded in the garage of a guy in Holland, Michigan. And it's maybe not as significant as of a garage activity as maybe Jobs and Woz for Apple, but in our corner of the world, it's a pretty big deal. And so we grew from that over the last 40 years to approximately a $700 million company that we are today. Globally, we've got over 2,900 employees. We really focus on automation, custom automation solutions. We're known for robotics and integrating robotics. However, we do much more than just that. We do everything from base tooling up to full-blown monster equipment or monster cells with hundreds of robots in them. And so our core and our DNA is really about technology. We've got over 700 engineers globally that focus on these custom solutions and are really committed to the development of innovative solutions. So that really leads into the Hitachi acquisition. So Hitachi acquired JR Automation in late 2019. Effectively, our first day of operation as part of the Hitachi group was January of 2020. So we're very new into this journey. I think we're still the baby in the Hitachi group. But from our perspective, we are very heavy, very strong in the OT world, and we have dabbled a bit in the digital world. However, we just, for JR to grow that scale, to grow the capability, it just wasn't financially feasible. And we had been owned by venture capitalists for over 20 years. So the move, when Hitachi made the decision to acquire JR, from our perspective, it was a great opportunity for us to leverage some of the fantastic technologies within the Hitachi group. And we're going to talk about the specific project that we're working on today with Hitachi Vantara. Why don't we jump to the next slide, JV? And with regards to the industries that JR supplies, you can see all of them here. In a typical year, being in Michigan, we are heavily automotive. So normally we'd be seeing 40 to 50% of our sales in the automotive area. However, this year being the COVID year that it was, what we actually saw, and we will be able to publish once we get through our 2020 fiscal year here, a tremendous growth in the life sciences, the e-commerce, and even the battery and energy areas. So like I said, in a traditional year, half would be automotive. This year, it's probably going to be more like 30%. But we do serve just about every major industrial category within the industry and hope to continue to do so. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to JV and let him talk a little bit about Vantara.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. So you guys have seen this slide once from Jeff early on. Sid also touched on it. But from Hitachi Limited's perspective, right, they have 110 years of experience in OT, another 60 years experience in IT. And this intersection in the middle is obviously where IoT and IoT, Industry 4.0, all the other terms you want to use, really starts to make sense, right? So in Japan, you know, there's a lot, Hitachi does a lot on the OT side and a lot on the IT side. Outside of Japan and the global market, the IT side is Vantara, right? So we're the IT arm of Hitachi on the outside of Japan. And on the OT side, you know, that's one of the reasons that they acquired JR Automation. Since there's so much experience in AI, artificial intelligence, IoT from a lot of the, you know, the previous work, it just made sense to acquire them to help further strengthen this kind of intersection that sits in the middle. when we're looking at industrial IoT. So we started this partnership early on just as kind of some conversations between the two companies, right? And I think, within a couple of months after, bi-weekly or weekly kind of teleconferences, we both understood it made sense, right? Because we're obviously, Ventara sits on the IT side, JR sits on the OT side, and we all started seeing really what it meant when you combine these two to form this kind of middle section here, right? So I think next, what Bob's going to talk through with you guys is, as these conversations went on, we found a project to at least start this collaboration, right? So the intent of this collaboration isn't only to, help JR with digital solutions or to put an industrial IoT component on a particular machine. It's really for Ventara to learn more about the OT space, JR to learn more about the IT space, and truly add this value that sits here in the middle with industrial IoT. Bob?
Great. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks, JV. And as JV mentioned, we did have a project that was brewing within JR Automation about the time of the acquisition. And even though I find this incredibly sexy, arguably the second sexiest machine on the planet today, the purpose of today isn't really to get into a lot of discussion about that, but talk more about the collaboration that we had, also about the learning that we've had as we worked together. So this machine is specifically for the aerospace industry, and it was in response to a problem that they brought to us and that we've been working together to solve. It's a manual operation that's done thousands of times on every aircraft that goes out the door. And so we found a way to automate that and to make it much more reliable from both a product quality as well from a process quality perspective. What it lacked was a digital piece. So we've been in the PLC world for as long as JR has been around. We're very adept at that. But as we were talking through potential projects that we could collaborate on, this one was just begging for that industrial technology piece that Hitachi Ventara was able to bring. So why don't we jump to the next slide here, JV? So what we desired and what we really wanted to do was add those other higher level parameters, things like process information, machine health, anomaly detection, using the analytics and using the power of the Lumada Manufacturing Insights system. That's where the magic really started to happen. We do have a quick video to show you that'll hopefully give you a little taste of what this does and what it's hoping to be. I will say this project isn't quite complete yet, but we're approaching the finish line here. JV, why don't you go ahead and start that video?
All right, I'm going to try. I'm not promising anything.
Should we play this with sound?
I think it has sound. For some reason, I could not get it to play today. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, I was not narrating because I wasn't sure if the sound was going through or not. But, that would have been annoying. But hopefully the visuals here help to describe what the machine does. Also get a little taste of some of the digital enhancements that were made as well. There we go. So we can pause it now, I think. So with that, I'll turn it back over to JP. He can talk about the digital piece.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. So Jeff, we probably should have listened to your advice and let you share the slides. My apologies on the sound there. But as Bob said, you know, what we realized is we had an opportunity that was sitting directly in front of us to collaborate on industrial IoT solution. You know, in the beginning, this phase of this kind of collaboration, we're going to add, you know, basic to kind of a little bit of advanced analytics to this solution. And since this is a brand new product, it's nothing that's been in the market today. You know, as we begin to look at what's next for this solution, we'll start looking at more of the advanced analytics, predictive maintenance, things like that. But in the beginning, what we'll do is we'll be able to just visualize all the sensors. You know, there's hundreds of sensors that sit in this machine, threshold notifications, alarms, anomaly detection for a lot of the KPIs. You know, I think one of the things that stood out to me as this partnership kind of grew is the different lenses when you think about industrial IoT, that an ITSI, right, as Ventara, and an OTSI as JRA, you know, the different frames of glasses that they see. So, you know, normally when we go into a customer from Ventara's perspective, we kind of look top down, right? How can we add efficiency to a manufacturing line, or how can we help, you know, X? And there are big problems. The thing that we had to change our view on is we had to look from the bottom up with this actual machine, right? So we're basically focused on a singular machine, and we needed to learn kind of how to get from a single machine up to the line, right? So I think that's more about, you know, what this partnership was about. And as I talked about earlier, kind of the different integration points, because, you know, when we met with JR to define the requirements that would be in this industrial IoT solution, it was a little different than what we would normally provide. So, you know, I think just this partnership in general is very strategic for both companies, not only because it's Hitachi, right? That's basically all I have for today. Bob, do you have anything else for the group?
No, I would just add to what you just said, that the lens from your side, but also the lens from the JR perspective. Similarly, we can get really entrenched, really bogged down and focused on the plant floor so much that we miss the bigger picture. And this has opened our eyes significantly to that world, you know, a layer above, where we're connecting equipment together, we're connecting factories together, and really realizing that Industry 4.0 journey. So from our perspective, as JV said, identically, it's been a tremendous learning experience, and we're really looking forward to the future. I guess we'll turn it over to you, Jeff.
Great. Well, thank you so much to you both. And I think that's really interesting, particularly the dashboards you're showing there as well. The machine itself is very cool. Don't get me wrong. But I think the data that you're going to get out of that, and there will be questions about that, I assure you. The data you get out of that, I think, is really interesting as well. So we're going to turn now to our questions, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions for the panel. We have two options for submitting questions. You can use the Zoom Q&A, which a number of people have already submitted questions through. We're also inviting you to take part in a poll, which you'll see on the screen right now. Or you can also submit your questions via Twitter using the Hitachi Vantara _IIoT hashtag. And before we get to the questions, I'll answer one that everybody also asks. Yes, you will be able to see the content from today's sessions. It'll be made available after the conclusion of the virtual conference, and everybody who's registered will be able to access it. In the event that time doesn't permit us to get through all of the questions, we'll carry the conversation over to social media and address them there via Twitter, once again using that hashtag, Hitachi Vantara _IIoT. So I'm going to get to the first question now. Once people have had a chance to finish answering the poll, I'll give another like 30 seconds or so, and then we'll start getting to the questions here. All right. So the first question is for Anant. You showed a lot of major changes. This is evolutionary. So how long do you think it will take for industrial companies to evolve? What geographic areas do you think are going to lead?
There are a couple of points in this. Is it evolutionary? Yes, it is evolutionary, but I think COVID brought those changes pretty rapidly to many companies last year. One example is we are doing this live online rather than being in person. That's the way we were used to do this couple of years back. So digital is front and center in every CEO's mind right now. So I think it has come to industrial technologies. The question is, how long will it take? It depends. And the reason I would say that is we see the market in three major buckets. We term companies either as non-digitizers, selective digitizers, and enterprise digitizers. As non-digitizers are companies that do not see a value in digital solutions. Those are companies that haven't even implemented an ERP. So a digital solution is not going to help them. Selective digitizers are companies that have implemented some solutions, some silos within those organizations might have already implemented it, but they don't have an enterprise-wide solution, obviously. And the final one, the enterprise digitizers, are companies that have implemented solutions across their full enterprise. Now, Hitachi is one example. If you were to put a number, I would say the non-digitizers, we would say 30 to 40% of the market is non-digitizers. People don't see value in that. A good another 30 to 40% is selective digitizers, or maybe no, even a bit higher, is selective digitizers, and the top 5 to 10% is enterprise digitizers. So it has come. Just it's just a matter of a few more years of solutions to be used. Coming to geographies, couple of years back, it was North America and Europe that were taking lead. But in today's scenario, we see companies across the globe taking a lead in digital technologies. So even in Asia Pacific, especially in China and India, you see large amount of digital solutions going on. China is leading in several digital innovations. We're also seeing that happening in other Asian regions. So from a leading standpoint, from an investment standpoint, maybe it's North America and Europe, which is from a dollar perspective might be leading, but from a number of company standpoint, I think it's equal across the globe.
Great, thank you for that. So, and I have a question for Sid. This is from Angela, who says, I think most companies start out looking for the turnkey solution without defining the roadmap. I think that's why so many companies have systems that don't serve well, nor are they expandable as the business grows. How can that standard philosophy change to support long-term business initiatives?
Quite a important observation, actually. And I guess from my side, I started working in automotive and industrials, went to IT and came back. I think a lot of the learnings on the OT side can be taken from how the IT side has developed and kind of sped past how they build technology. And the IoT progress that has happened in the last 5 years, from my point, was to actually learn a lot from the IT side, like how the Googles and the Facebooks and the Amazons have been able to use technology in doing the day-to-day work. And that has kind of made the change in the way we deploy technology in the OT side. And to the actual question that Angela was asking, we have over time, like in the manufacturing sector, kind of build turnkey solutions. So you have companies like ABB, Rockwell, Honeywell, which kind of make a system that does something, because in manufacturing, people buy something that does something. They're not like very interested in buying underlying platforms. And that's how we ended up with lots of turnkey things that does very unique things. In the IoT world, I think the whole essence has been, let's do a platform thing. So let's build an underlying data platform, underlying infrastructure platform, and then start building applications on top, and use the same underlying everywhere in every factory. And I think that is the way that we are seeing adoption changing, and not making unique elements that does only one thing, but having this underlying thing that can do a lot of things. So I think that is what is happening, and more happening, and that is kind of what at least I think the IoT has brought to the table, and is solving a lot of our problems in manufacturing now.
Great, thank you for that. We have another question now from Naresh, and it is, in the building blocks of digitalization, there's a point on quality cost reduction. Does that mean we're compromising on quality? And can you elaborate on that?
Fair comment. Means quality is always considered a cost center. So there is always the element of, can you cut cost? Can you cut cost? And yes, it will looks like logically when you cut costs, you cut the actual quality. But the intention is not to cut quality, but intention is to use digital tools that have come to us and newer tools to make the process more optimized, faster, that you can actually get a benefit of having lower cost in your quality profile. So, I mean, some of these items are, we inspect manually, we inspect too many times. And a couple of projects that I have done, having a visual inspection can allow you to get easy way of removing a lot of these steps, and get to like higher quality, in the sense of you can actually do, like rather than having 5 people looking at 5 times, you can have a computer or a vision system looking at 25 times, and hence it will reduce the cost, it will increase the accuracy, and only call in a human when you think you have a high probability that things are going wrong. So that could be a good example of how quality can be improved by having multiple inspections, a lot more inspection that we do right now, but overall cost will be lower for the enterprise.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I think we have time for one more question, and I'm just trying to pick one here. And as I said earlier, we'll try and answer the others offline. I'm going to take this one from Sam. And this one is for you, Bob and JT. So if Smart Attach is the second sexiest machine in the world, what's the first? You knew you were going to get that.
So yeah, so the first one is still sitting on our floor. I can't share it with you yet, but that will be our discussion point for next year when we do this again. So.
Okay, well, thank you for that, and thanks to everybody for all of the great questions. Visit our events page for upcoming educational webcasts brought to you by IIoT World. You'll find additional information at IIoT-world.com. Special thanks to our sponsor, Hitachi Vantara, for this educational session, and to all our panelists. If you have a suggestion for a topic or otherwise, we always welcome feedback, so please drop us a message and let us know. If you like what you heard today, we invite you to subscribe to our newsletters, YouTube channels, and follow us on Twitter at IIoT_world. This concludes our program for today, and I encourage you to stick around for the next session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.